The reality is that many are sick and dying from disproportionate environmental exposure.
Race was still the most potent factor that determined where the nation's hazardous waste facilities are located.
This is a poverty map of California, with the darker areas experiencing more poverty and the lighter areas experiencing less. When we put it next to maps of overall pollution burden, lead risk, pesticide use, and drinking water contaminants, we can see that the maps look very similar to each other, proving the direct connection between poverty and pollution.
If I were a newly elected member of Congress, the issue that would be my first priority is environmental justice. Low-income communities and communities of color often suffer brutal and unreasonable amounts of environmental burdens, such as increased air and water pollution, due to the uneven distribution of freeways, factories, ports, power plants, industrial facilities, and other significant pollution sources, deliberately pushing the weight of these impacts towards communities of lower income or communities containing people of a certain race or national origin.
Affluent African Americans who make $50,000 to $60,000 a year are more likely to live in more polluted neighborhoods than whites who make $10,000.
One example that has threatened to affect the people in my community is the proposed construction of a new rail yard called the Southern California International Gateway.
The Southern California International Gateway is a proposed new rail yard near the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, which would handle shipping containers to put them on rail rather than transporting them via trucks on local freeways. This would reduce air pollution in the region. However, due to the activities at the rail yard, it would increase air pollution in the local communities of West Long Beach, Carson, and Wilmington, which are communities that are already heavily impacted by air pollution from the ports, from refineries, and other industrial activities.
When all of this pollution gets dumped on the same areas over and over again, it begins to threaten the health and safety of the people living in these communities.
Generations of family members diagnosed with cancer, likely connected to the pollution in the air they breathe or the water they drink.
Zip code, like where you live, is one of the biggest predictors of your well-being and your health. Places that have higher air pollution have higher incidences of asthma, lung disease, because it triggers asthma attacks more. You have decreased access to healthy foods, decreased access to healthy play spaces.
This is harming their daily lives, right? If you're breathing air that gives you a headache, it gives you a stomach ache, maybe over a long term it causes cancer or other long-term diseases.
Environmental justice has been an issue for a very long time, but up until about 40 to 60 years ago, its impacts have been completely overlooked.
Environmental justice started during the civil rights movement of the 60s and was even part of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. But it really took off in the 80s when people just became more aware of things that were happening around them.
The fight for environmental justice has continued to grow, and people have began to see the influence their voices can have through the recent policies that will improve environmental justice.
During his first week on the job, President Biden issued an executive order charging his cabinet to take a whole-of-government approach to advancing environmental justice.
There are many policies that impact environmental justice, including national laws and policies that impact the entire country as a whole, like the National Environmental Policy Act, the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, and more, which require environmental assessments to be performed and control harmful environmental impacts like air and water pollution or dumping harmful substances like hazardous waste, therefore also protecting the health and safety of residents living in the communities that often suffer from these issues. There are also state laws which impact individual states separately, like the California Environmental Quality Act, and even local or city policies. One example of a local environmental justice policy is near my neighborhood, more specifically West Long Beach, which is an area that already suffers a lot of pollution. There was an issue with drive-thrus, which put off a lot of pollution from the idling cars, and it resulted in a new city policy.
They were going to redevelop a corner on Artesian Atlantic, and they were going to put in 3 drive-thrus. Now, the drive-thrus are really close to the houses. They're just across the alley from houses, and we were concerned about the negative impact of pollution from the drive-thrus, and also the fact that those houses are in between drive-thrus and the freeway. Now, we ended up getting a group of people to go to a planning commission meeting in the city of Long Beach. The city, 6 months later, or within about 6 months, developed a drive-through policy. So it's really getting the word out to let the community know that they can be involved in the process and they can make a difference.
As this example shows, just getting your voice out there is one of the best solutions to improve environmental justice, but there are also some other more direct solutions and possible policies that can also help.
One of the solutions is declaring areas that have high levels of pollution a green zone. Now, when you have the designation as a green zone, then developers come in and they have to find ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. More money can come into the area to help reduce pollution. And it's also part of the land use element, but that green zone part hasn't been implemented yet. And what we're fighting for now is to implement that green zone element into North Long Beach, Central Long Beach, and West Long Beach, which are the highest polluted areas in Long Beach.
Environmental justice should be a basic human right. Everyone deserves the opportunity to live, work, and learn in a clean and safe environment, regardless of where they come from, the color of their skin, or the money that they make.